Welcome to Confident Coparenting, building a better life for you and your kids. I'm your host, Jeanne Ward. This show goes beyond co-parenting. It's about self-discovery and personal growth. Separation and divorce can shake your sense of identity, but my goal is to help you feel at ease in your own skin, both as a parent and in your new life. Through engaging conversations, I'll share tips, tools, and mindset shifts to help you build confidence, communicate effectively, and strengthen your self-identity. Let's dive in and see your situation in a new light, because when you thrive, so do your kids. A better future starts now. Hi, I'm Jeanne Ward, and you're listening to Confident Coparenting on Transformation Talk Radio. Today is a little bit of a different episode for a few reasons. One is I'm going to be talking to you today, just me. I am not bringing on anyone else, no guest, no expert. So in that way, it is a little bit different. And the other reason why it's really different is today is going to be my last episode of Confident Co-Parenting. My goal when I started this was to do it for a year, do it once a month for 12 months, and this is the 12th month. So this is it. We've gotten to go over so many things. Talked about communication. We've talked about emotions and emotion regulation, conflict with your ex as well as your kids, loyalty binds that happen with the kids. And we talked to my son about what his real experience was going through divorce and post-divorce. We've even talked about a lot of the tools. So discernment counseling, nonviolent communication or language of compassion, the motivational interviewing tool, just so many things. We've had so many experts from attorneys to mediators to other coaches and therapists. And so we've just had a really great run for it, talking about so many things that are important to you and I as we either are going through divorce or even years post divorce. And so today I want to zoom out a little bit more and look at a bigger picture and talk about a thread that I've seen kind of weave its way through a lot of the episodes. And that's about that co-parenting isn't about controlling your ex. It is about how you show up all the time and what choices you're making to show up. So I know sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. It still is a hard pill to swallow for me, but during and after divorce, it can be so challenging and so tempting to want to address your ex and tell them what they need to do or should be doing, whether it's how they relate to you and or how they're parenting the kids. The thing is, and what I've learned over the years is that we have no control over anybody else, definitely an adult. Sometimes when the kids are younger, we do have that control and ability to manage them. And that's part of our job as parents, is to help give them the structure and influence as well as modeling for them so that they can grow up into being productive, good humans when they're adults. So it is important when they're young. But if y'all listen to the episode where I talked to my ex-husband, one thing that he spoke about is how at a time when he felt his life was out of control, he turned to trying to control our son, thinking that that was the way to really help our son grow into a good adult, a strong man as an adult. And it didn't work. And so it was interesting listening to him go through that and talk about the experience and the outcome. We all have a sphere of influence. If you think of circles, that first circle is you, right? And we have so much control over our thoughts, our emotions, and then our actions. It takes a long time to gain that control over thoughts and emotions. But once we're able to get more comfortable and used to it, then we are able to translate it into how we're acting. And if you kind of keep going out in that circle, then we see that it's less control, a little more influence. So maybe that first circle outside of us is our children. Maybe it's friends where we do have influence as far as, what activities they do, because we maybe influence them to go to something that we'd like to go to, a movie or a game. Um, you know, um, Maybe even influencing things that people wear. So, so influence starts to filter in, but control starts to get lost. And then as you go further out into that circle of influence or sphere of influence, and now we're talking about people that aren't as close to you and or are not as in tune with you or aligned with you, the influence and control just goes away. And so it's an interesting way to look at where can I manage myself and others so that life is the way that I'd like it. And ideally, we're all hoping to have a calm, peaceful, and serene life. Um, so like I said, it's about how we're showing up. That's a lot of what I talked about in the 12 sessions, or the other 11. Definitely going to talk about it today. But just showing up in regards to um, who you are as a human, just being the best human you can be, being the best parent that you can be as well, and working on that every day. So going to talk about the different highlights that showed up for me as I was looking at all the different episodes over the past year, and let's get to it. So the first one is what I was just saying. It starts with you. It starts with me, right? It starts with each one of us. And um, I had a fellow divorce coach, Justin Milrad, come on a few months ago, and he's written a book. I'm going to share with you some of the resources that I've had gotten over the year. You 2.0. And this is such a great resource into as far as reinventing you, right? Divorce is such a major change and such a hardship on us, on our family, especially on the kids. And so, in that process of once things are settling down, the dust has settled, and we can start thinking more clearly, it's really great to have some tools and guidance as to how we can improve and change. And Justin does some really great chapters on not only talking about it, but giving you some tips and tools. And he's even got a workbook to go with it if you want to actually work through it and write down answers to questions he has, things like that. So starting with ourselves is really important. The other thing is, as we can help ourselves stay calm, then that helps our children. It helps them see what it's like to regulate ourselves and our emotions, and it makes them feel safe. And that's what's most important for them in regards to their being able to live a healthy life themselves. Um, I often talk about the central nervous system, and you all might know a bit about this, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which is the sympathetic, which is kind of the rising up of the different emotions and getting more worked up and or wound up, and that's when certain physical things happen. Our heart will start racing a little bit more. We might start sweating. um, it's harder to think clearly, and even physical things are happening within our body. For example, we will stop digesting food, because our body thinks that we are in an emergency or a threatening situation where we're going to have to do, possibly do fight or flight, and it's going to have to restrict blood if there's an accident. So all those things are happening in our bodies, and it's really good and important when there is true threat and immediate threat. But when it's more of the low lying everyday anxiety, that's just, like I said, anxiety. It's anxiety provoking, that our bodies can start to get used to, and we can start to have all of those physical symptoms even when there isn't an immediate intense threat to us. It's the day-to-day anxiety that's coming from the and what might be an actual threat from an ex, from the situation, from our kids. So what's helpful to learn how to do is to regulate and utilize the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming of all of those physical aspects of our body and of our nervous system. And what happens is your heart starts slowing down. You're able to think more clearly. Your digestion gets back on track and blood starts flowing. Um, Breathing techniques are a great way to do that. For example, the one that I like the best is I will breathe in for 6 seconds, hold for 4, then breathe out for 6 seconds, hold for 4, and just continue to do that, um, you know, maybe 5, 6 times so that it gives my heart rate and body the chance to calm down. So there are so many things out there that you can do in regards to helping yourself get regulated so that you're more comfortable and your kids feel safer. They can model that and they can get more regulated themselves. Something else that goes hand in hand with that is feelings. And a highlight that I want to share is that feelings are information, they're not instructions, and they shouldn't be used as judgment. And I learned that specifically from Belcher, sorry, who did an episode with me on the language of compassion. And it's really nonviolent communication, and that's the founder, what he came up with as far as a title. But she has redubbed it the language of compassion. And this is just a really great book that I like. It is Dr. Marshall Rosenberg who has created this practice. And this is one great book for us as parents called Raising Children Compassionately. And it helps use the tools that she shares with us in that episode of how to communicate with someone when you're in a really tense situation with them. So it is really helpful with an ex as well as with our kids. Um, the thing I love about her, what she shares, is that emotions are not or should not be judged, but just used as information in regards to understanding if our needs are being met or not. So, for example, if we are feeling those less pleasant feelings, such as anger, depression, etc., our needs are not being met. If we are feeling more positive emotions, um, you know, emotions that are more pleasant, happiness, joy, excitement, or even calm, then our needs are being met. So she's able to put it together with our needs being met or not and what emotions we're experiencing. The other tool that I love to share is permission to feel. And I share this because in the back there is what is similar to a feelings wheel, but it talks about pleasantness of the feeling and how much energy is behind it. So another great resource in regards to feelings. And when we are able to identify and label the feeling, we're able to move through it more quickly. And Dr. Brackett in this book talks more about that. So, it's really helpful to change our mindset to think about emotions and feelings as information and not as weaknesses. And then that actually helps our kids understand as well that it's okay to have these feelings, even if they're really big and they feel really big. And sometimes kids, when they're younger, can't even put a name to it or understand the difference in some feelings. And then that's okay, right? It just helps give us some more information. Next, I want to talk about conflict being inevitable, but that escalation is optional. So, it's divorce, right? When we're going through divorce, we are separating with a partner. because things didn't work out, because there is some sort of conflict. So it's inevitable that there will be continued conflict within that separation process, within that divorce process, and even post divorce. Um, how we manage it, we do have control over, right? So even though there's going to be the conflict, we can sometimes prepare responses, prepare boundaries so that we know where our limits are. In mediation, we can prepare what is our absolute minimum that we will accept as far as receiving an offer, things like that. Um, we've also talked about things like pausing, um, setting bigger intentions as well, setting that overall intention of what you want to have happen. That's a big part of my coaching when I'm working with people, is identifying what is their goal, what do they want. Sometimes a parent just wants to be able to get up in time to prepare a good lunch for their kids before the kids go off to school, and then maybe even have some extra time to sit and have breakfast with the kids and talk to them before they're off for the day. Sometimes it's about dating, and you want to date within the next 2 to 3 years. So there's all of these goals that we have during and post divorce, and that can also help us with how we manage our feelings and actions if we know where we are heading and where we want to go. Um, Sometimes it is helpful to shorten the email, to stick to the facts, to let something go. And there are two really great resources for this that I love. Within the Certified Divorce Coach program, we talk about CIC, and that means when we're creating a communication, usually it's text or email, to use the CIC, and that means C for concise, keep it short. I for informative, just the facts. And the other C is for courteous. Try not to be mean, don't attack, things like that, right? So keep it, nice, simple, and informative. Um, there is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Bill Eddy, EDDY. He is a licensed clinical social worker as well as an attorney and mediator. And he has created something called BIFF, BIFF, and that stands for brief, informative, friendly, and firm. So very similar. And these are just reminders of how to engage with a person that you're having challenges with, especially when it's in writing. Um, Another topic that we talked about over the year was children don't need perfect parents; they need safe ones. So I've already mentioned that a little bit on today's episode. No divorce is going to be perfect. Like I said, there's a reason that we're separating, and it creates loss, right? We all go into relationships with positive feelings, positive hopes for a future, especially if we're getting married and having children. And so when that does not happen, there's a lot of loss, even of the idea that, there would be a longer future. So we go through those stages of grief after and during divorce. And that's okay. That is being human. It's helping us process our emotions, and it's critical that we do go through that. With our children, they're going to go through a similar process. And while they go through it, it's okay that, you know, there are emotions going on with you. And as long as they're appropriate for the child, it's okay to talk to them about it, because then that is another way to provide them with a safe space and that they know it's okay to be having hard feelings. Um, the kids also really need whatever kind of predictability and stability or routine is possible during the time that they're going through divorce and post divorce. There's already going to be so many changes for them in regards to, moving homes and or just having a parent back and forth in their life. And So it's really good wherever you can create structure and routine and predictability to do that for them, because again, that helps them feel and know that they're safe. Um, we don't want to ask them to be messengers. That's putting them in a position that's not healthy or comfortable for them. Um, they're not therapists. They shouldn't be therapists for us or for their siblings. And they're not referees. It's interesting because my son was on a podcast last month, and one thing he talked about was even when my ex and I, when Matt and I would go into a room, a separate room, close the door to have an argument, he was aware. He could hear the raised voices, and he talked about how uncomfortable that was for him. Well, it was really interesting because this past weekend, he was home from college, not feeling great. He was in his room, the door was open. I was having a challenging conversation on the phone with his dad. I raised my voice, and then I heard him slam his door. And it reminded me of what he shared on the podcast, which was that makes him really uncomfortable. So even though I had messed up, gave me the opportunity to go into his room afterwards. I asked him if he was willing to talk about it. He said he was, and we did a little debrief. But, again, it was a moment where it made him uncomfortable and not feel safe. So whatever we can do to help them through that and create that safe space, even in a messy, imperfect situation. Next, I want to talk about detaching with love, or lovingly detach. And this is something that is, it's not always talked about a lot because I think detachment can be confusing. For me, when I first heard the word, I didn't really know what it meant. And at first I thought, oh, it means, you detach with like a hatchet. You just say, I'm no longer talking to you, or I'm no longer letting you, um, do this, that, or the other with me and or our child. And then I slowly learned that there are other ways that, we can maybe detach with a scissors versus that hatchet. And, do it in a more kind way. I use the example of within an alcoholic situation. There's a story I've heard about a woman whose husband was drinking regularly. He would get into bed and then fall out of bed. And it just was so stressful for her that she eventually just let him lie on the ground. That was her way of detaching. And then as she thought more about it and learned about detaching with love, she eventually started putting a blanket over him to at least make him a little more comfortable. But she still was detaching, and that was the consequence of his actions of drinking. So that's another topic. One more topic I really want to stress is that growth happens in the muck. Um, I have a 5-step process within my coaching that I go through, and the first one is sitting in the muck. It is really challenging to try to move through all of this quickly and not honor our feelings. So that's why I talk about the different resources like permission to feel. Um, it is so critical that we not only feel the feels, but try to label them, because like I said, we're able to then move through them more quickly. It's so easy in times of stress and in times of grief to just do versus sit and be and experience. So for example, I know I had a lot of deaths in the past 5, 6 years, and there's so much to do after someone dies that it's easy to get caught up in that, stay in that to do mode, and not sit and feel the grief and the sadness. Um, Same thing with divorce. So it's really helpful when you can sit and feel it, not to distract ourselves from the feelings. Sometimes we'll use drugs and alcohol. Sometimes we'll binge watch TV shows. Sometimes we'll overshop. Sometimes we'll jump into a new relationship. And so there are all these things that we sometimes tend to do to avoid the feelings. So it is really good to just honor the messiness with the divorce as well as with yourselves, and sit in the muck. Um, for me, it then moves us into the next 4 steps, which is identifying your vision exploring how you're going to reach that vision, practicing, and then reviewing and rewarding yourself. Always, always, always reward yourself when you can and be gentle on yourself when you can. Um, that is one thing that I have learned the hard way through this process, and I'm still learning it. Even learned it last weekend with the challenging situation I had with my ex, that even when I mess up, it's okay as long as I'm learning from it, and to be gentle on myself. So I hope that you all can be as gentle as possible on yourselves too. I'm so glad that I was able to do this with you, to be with you all for the past year, and hope that maybe in the future we can connect and our paths will cross. You can always reach out to me at confidentcoparenting.com. And all my contact information is on there. I would love to hear from you all. Um, and as we close, just wanted to remind you, choose the clarity over the chaos, choose growth over blame, and definitely choose you. So I wish you all the best, and always focus on yourselves and those relationships that matter most to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Confident Coparenting. Join me, Jeanne Ward, every second Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights and practical strategies to support your co-parenting journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on social media, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with those who could benefit. And if you or someone you know needs support, coaching can make all the difference. Visit confidentcoparenting.com to learn more. See you next time.